James Mennie brought to you by Gilbert & Daughter. Last chance for all winter items. Everything is $20, no exceptions. Gilbert & Daughter, 49 Donegani in Point Claire.
What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, we have a brand new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, today addressing the media, I think for probably longer than he has up until now. Give me your overall take on what you've seen so far.
Well, before we go any further, and just for your benefit as well, because it's really been bothering me this week how much you've been bothered by the things that Donald Trump and his entourage have been saying, especially about Canada becoming the 51st state. Yep. This afternoon, the President of the United States was having some issues. He was speaking to the press, talking about issues he was having with the administration of Washington, D.C., which is not a state, it's a sort of a city-state, and they hate Trump. D.C. has always hated Trump. Anyway, he said if the administration can't get the job done, the federal government will simply take it over. So you have to understand it's not just about Canada or Greenland or Panama. It's about anyone who doesn't agree with Donald Trump. There are only so many rooms for cassettes in Trump's head, and all those cassettes are 8-track. So please, let's not lose any more precious sleep or energy over Donald Trump baying at the moon about taking over the next thing that doesn't agree with him. Although we can pat ourselves on the back, I think we have really established an international reputation as being the first, but hopefully not the last bunch of people who have poked this guy in the eye and will continue to do so until he backs off. Now, the cabinet, interesting choices. Wartime cabinet, clearly an economic and trade war cabinet. Dominic LeBlanc stays where he is as the international trade minister. The Energizer Bunny, François-Philippe Champagne, who really is a good ally to Prime Minister Carney, basically becomes the finance minister. Chrystia Freeland got transport. I think that is more to keep her in cabinet. I don't think she's going to stay there for too long. I think there are plans down the road for Chrystia Freeland. I thought it interesting that Stephen Guilbeault becomes a Quebec lieutenant because I have a sneaking suspicion he's going to be the guy they're going to be using to try and sell the whole idea of running pipelines through Quebec, which would be deliciously ironic, but that's where we are right now. So many things have changed, so many fundamental elements of the political roadmap, the federal political roadmap, and indeed provincial roadmap in this country have changed in such a short period of time. But you look at this, and once again, we have to remember this is, how can I put it, this is sort of a pickup cabinet. They're going to be calling an election very, very soon, next week, my understanding is, at which point, you know what, all bets are off, they're all MPs looking for office, and then he'll have to form another cabinet again. But the bottom line here is he's making it clear that, yeah, you know what, I'm not Justin Trudeau's mini-me. A lot of people, Mark Miller, who is very, very close to Justin Trudeau, as far as I'm concerned, a very competent immigration minister, he's out of the picture. Yeah. And this idea that he is keeping himself as prime minister at length from the Trudeau legacy, if you will. But he's also saying, you know what, if there's people who are talented to do what they do, they're going to stay in their job. And what's fascinating, I find in all of this, there's no mention of it, but I was thinking suspicion as well that Ontario Premier Doug Ford will remain the minister responsible for dealing with Donald Trump and Howard Lutnick, for the foreseeable future.
It's funny, that whole idea of how things change now that Mark Carney is there with respect to negotiating with the U.S., right? I mean, what we've seen now, and I don't know if you saw that comment earlier today, Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, already called out Mark Carney for going to Europe, where he's been invited, and where we're trying to establish better relations, I guess. Mm-hmm. I thought that's what we've been talking about, and not going to the U.S. first. And I'm thinking to myself, is this what this is going to turn into, interprovincial squabbles now? Because everyone has a different take on things, or are we going to have a Team Canada approach?
I don't think Scott Moe speaks for the country, Aaron. I think Scott Moe speaks for a part of Saskatchewan, maybe, and himself. But I don't think anyone's too worried, gee, what does Scott Moe think about this? And quite frankly, this is a very, very eloquent message, because normally Canadian prime ministers do, the first thing they do is, they either invite the president of the U.S. over, they go visit the U.S. Yeah. He's going to Europe. The message is clear. And it's a great message to send right away because Trump is going to go ballistic over this. Trump does not like to be slighted, and this is the most delicious way to slap him right across the face without uttering a word. And given the kind of week Trump's been having as well domestically, and looking at the way that, before people are aghast going, Canada's such an ally, and look how the U.S. is treating it. Canada is pushing back. Canada is acting. Canada is not waiting or scratching its head or tearing or like some premiers turning around saying, no, keep going back, keep trying to curry favor with Donald Trump. It's clear that this is not the same country that it was 2 months ago, Aaron. In terms of governance, in terms of international relations, in terms of outlook. And it's going to be fascinating to see, my God, I hate to say it this way, but it'll be fascinating to see where we are by next week and where indeed we are in the world and vis-a-vis the U.S. even by next week, because things keep changing very rapidly. But I got to tell you, so far so good for Mark Carney. I am very disappointed to hear the same aggrieved and quite frankly, whiny tone from Pierre Poilievre. Do you want to win this election or not, Monsieur Poilievre? Because, keep doing what you're doing. People are fed up with it. It's like a fly, it's like a mosquito buzzing in your ear. Find some new material. Find a new way to address this issue. But if it's the idea, it's just the same guys, I got news for you. The polls suggest that a lot of Canadians like this particular mix. So unless you want to go down as yet another Tory leader who dropped into a liberal, meat grinder, I suggest you change your plans very, very soon.
I would say to what he said today, we're going to play some of this back later in the show, Jim, but a couple of things that I noted. Number one, the fact that his answers are very short in complete contrast to Justin Trudeau, who used to go on and on, right? That was number one. I think that's a welcome change. And number two, I found two things particularly interesting. We look for small things, right? He was asked a question about Donald Trump, and the question said, Prime Minister, Trump said, and he stopped the questioner and said, President Trump. And then at another point, he used the word respect when referring to him. And I think that goes, miles as far as Donald Trump is concerned. So I thought that was very specific, very particular to him. And I thought that's kind of a nice approach.
Well, yes. And what I also found fascinating is in his opening remarks during his press conference, he points out, there are three founding peoples, Indigenous people, French, and British. And I thought, if you tried to say that 6 months ago, you have been run out of town on a rail. He's turning around saying, how dare you say that these colonizers are responsible for Canada, and how dare you group them in with Indigenous people that they exploit and so on and so forth. It goes to show you what the sea change has been, but this is it. This is the message. We are not Americans, President Trump. We are not going to be a part of your sphere. Don't even think about joking about it. Even if you are, don't joke about it, because this is who we are, and we're not going to change. And the fact that, add that to the trip to Europe, the message is very clear. And quite frankly, I think before he tucks in tonight, his first night as Prime Minister of Canada, I really don't think that Mark Carney is going to be too worried about what Scott Moe has to say about anything whatsoever.
Yeah, by the way, as to the issue of Canada's 51st state, I loved his answer, which was simply, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That was great.
Period.
All right. One other thing real quick, and then I'll move on. What do you make of Stephen Guilbeault now being appointed Quebec lieutenant? This, you said, the idea here, to sell Quebec, as you said, on oil, but what does this mean as far as language concerns go?
Well, listen, I don't think so. I think it's more, he's a Quebecer. He was perceived as being, certainly even in Quebec, as being, a drafted environmental radical who became a cabinet minister. And like I said, I think this is the delicious irony. I think he is there to sell Quebec on the idea, or to give some, how can I put it, credibility to the idea that, okay, that was then, this is now, and we must get our resources, our petroleum, our natural gas, to a tidewater port, because it's a huge part of our economy. And if we don't, we know who's going to be stomping all over us if we turn around and start, going into false starts again. So I find that interesting, and quite frankly as well, it's an interesting situation, I think, for Mr. Guilbeault, because if he doesn't feel he can deal with that, he doesn't have to seek office in the next election either. But that, to me, is what brings him over there. I mean, I see him, if he's bringing things to the table, it's his credibility as an environmentalist, and, quite frankly, from what I've seen, a pragmatic politician. So we'll see how that plays out. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that Mark Carney, I think in the end, wants to be his own Quebec lieutenant. He knows the whole language thing is there, but I think, and that's the lesson I think a lot of Anglo politicians learned from Jack Layton, it's enough to try, visibly try, demonstrably try, and you know what? Quebecers will cut you some slack, and I think that's what we're going to see with Mark Carney, especially over the course of this campaign.
I think you're right. All right, let me get one take real quick to do with none of this. It was my question today. We kind of ignored this all week, but it's a big story. The Bay now seeking bankruptcy protection. How do you think we got here, Jim?
Well, I got to tell you, buddy, you're talking to a guy. I don't know if you remember Simpson's department store.
Sure.
Okay, it was one of my first full-time jobs, right? I was working there as a warehouseman, and no, I'm serious.
I'm laughing because I worked at Eaton's in housewares.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I was up in the carpeting and home furnishing. But all that said, we got bought by the Bay. I don't know if people remember that. The Bay gobbled up Simpsons, and I think 2 years later we went broke. I mean, the rest is history. It was good news for me. I tripped into journalism, but that was the thing. They came in, and we're going to do this and do that and whatever. And people said, well, maybe this isn't a good idea. And the bottom line was, so honestly, I know people say, well, it's Canadian it's part of our history, and it's a Canadian retailer. Remember, the original charter for the Hudson's Bay Company was to do business in Rupert's Land. So everyone take a deep breath here. I mean, it's not exactly like Tim Hortons. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the way of business, and of course we can turn around and gleefully say, well, listen, it took an American to bring it down.
Yeah. All right, I'll leave it at that, Jim. Have a great weekend.
You too, buddy.